Welcome back to Yield Today with Dallin Candland. I'm here with Dai Manuel. He's a men's fitness mentor. He just loves talking about, his journey, vulnerability, compassion. I'm like, this guy is on board with my board as well. So let's like go surfing. Let's do this together. Let's skateboard or Tony Hawk. Let's do that. So thank you for coming, Dai.
Thanks, Dallin. Honestly, this is fantastic, and I think it's been a long time in the making. It's just great to be here, and also to see you in good spirits, to see you looking well. It's. I know we all have we're all on a journey, right? And I think sometimes we forget that we get so stuck in our own journeys, we forget everybody else is having one too, and I think that's also that thing about vulnerability you alluded to earlier, is that ability to just open up and connect with others, to empathize, to allow the feelings to actually emerge and show itself. Because you know what? We're not humans being emotional. We're emotional human beings, and I think sometimes we forget that. And as such, it's so funny because that whole stoic movement, right? And the idea of being highly logical and restraining on the emotions, I can appreciate there's a place for that, but not in the home typically. In the home, around those closest people, around a campfire, those communities that we connect with. I mean, sometimes the conversation's got to go a little bit deeper. But the only way you can do that is you got to open up. And that act of opening up is an act of being vulnerable. But it's just a skill like any other skill, and you can develop it. So, anyways, I'm like in how we're going to jam today, and let's do this. This is great.
It'll be good. Yeah, there's so many different places we could take this
Mm,
seriously, but I'll just go with something I
sure.
heard on
Yeah.
a podcast pretty recently about how emotions are
Mm-hmm.
habits in the body. I thought that was interesting. So like when we
Mm,
talked or we were planning to talk, it was July 2022. I had just done another week of FSY and was really excited to jam with you, and then I totally slept in and was just had all this kind of stuff going on in my head, and I probably like was up late that night trying to sleep or something. And a lot of that was the need to talk, because when you talk with people then you can understand like, oh, I've experienced that emotion, I've experienced that habit in my body, I've experienced that. What has conversation done for you in your life, like really honest conversation?
well, to be fair, it wasn't until I really got into probably my early 30s, 33, 34. So this is going back about 13 years ago. Uh, I went through a pretty traumatic period, and it was a culmination of many years. Okay, it's not like it just all of a sudden I hit a breaking point. No, it was like I just kept pushing that boundary, right? I kept bending it, bending it, bending it. I'm like, hey, look, it's got some good flexion here, no worries, and then bam, it breaks, right? And I struggled with alcohol. Full disclosure, also not only alcohol, but it also led me to doing other things that normally I wouldn't do. It's way outside my character and not aligned with my values at all. But yet I'd find myself in these altered states, and I would often, morality just, whoop, it was like selective morality, right? And I would do things like I would do certain drugs, I would do certain things and connect with certain types of people that I normally would never connect with, but all in this sort of altered state, because alcohol was my escape. It was my crutch as well. And for me, to be vulnerable with somebody often meant I needed a lot of stuff to allow me to open up. But I also like the fact that if they were also in that altered state, if we were being vulnerable with each other, probably won't remember it tomorrow anyway. So hey, it's all good. Let it rip. Not healthy. Not healthy at all. Both physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Like it was very unhealthy in all those areas. And as someone with young kids, I recognize that especially when you have children, you realize, and you work with a lot of youth, so you know this too, is us in these positions as elders, as people with more life experience, we're in a wonderful place to not only model certain habits, behaviors, thoughts, and actions, but also mentor those. And it's through modeling and mentoring that we all learn. And unfortunately, when I look back at my own life, especially in my late teens and then my 20s, I didn't have great representations of holistically healthy men, healthy in all those regions, especially other fathers that were very healthy in all those areas. So I was just modeling and being mentored by people that had certain habits and behaviors and belief systems that, well, everybody else is doing it, so maybe this is what I should do too. And that led down a slippery path of well, a lot of challenges arising and almost losing my family, losing my career. Like just a lot of things were challenged because, like I said, you get to a breaking point. You cannot sustain that. As much as you tell yourself you can, trust me, there comes a point where things go a different direction, whether you like it or not. And you got to do something in that moment, or else you take that ride and you got to be okay with wherever it goes. And sometimes it's not in a pleasant place, And so, yeah, 13 years ago, started opening up a lot more, connecting with the right types of people because I realized I needed to change my association. And because of that, I started to develop this comfort with being vulnerable. And not for the sake of, hey, look at me, like a lot of social media influencers, being vulnerable on social where, you have to wonder and question, is there a hidden agenda here? What's the reason? Is this for clicks? Is this for likes? Is this for views? Or is this to make an impact, to inspire, to help, to serve someone else, to serve a community, to serve a greater purpose, And I'm not calling people out on this, but I'm saying that this vulnerability has been misused, and we have to question our authenticity at times. And anyways, I go off on these sort of tangents. My apologies on that. But that's really it. When I started opening up with vulnerability, my life started to feel like it was making more sense. I felt more connected, more on purpose, more clear and more confident in what I was doing and the direction I was going with my life. And it's been a beautiful journey, man. This last 13, 14 years, like so much has changed. Some of those changes I didn't necessarily invite in, but it happened anyways. But I rolled with it. And I'm very grateful for where I am today. And had I not experienced all those things and come to that moment and to experience developing this skill called vulnerability to greater connections, you and I wouldn't be talking right now,
I do like the frame that vulnerability is a skill. And I think just like any skill, there needs to be times where I think last year really helped me understand like times where you kind of go full throttle, like with sharing stuff. And then there's other times where you kind of sense a little bit where that other person is. Like maybe that person isn't ready for me to like share all of this stuff. Maybe I should share like just a couple things and see how they're doing. And one thing that I think has really changed, whereas like if we had done this interview in July of 2022, I would have been like, I would have probably put you on some kind of pedestal at least a little bit, instead of like saying we're two guys having a talk and we've had different journeys and it's cool. Let's riff about it, let's talk about it. Because I think when we do put people on pedestals or we put ourselves above somebody else or something, now we're not really listening, and there's a real danger of that. But what vulnerability really gave me last year is there'd be guys I talk on the phone with, it's like, oh yeah, I know what that's like, or I feel what that's like, and I'd be like, no, you don't. But like, then there'd be this other part, like deeper part, where somebody would say something like, no, like I wouldn't like say that, It was nuts. It was crazy. I had a lot of different conversations with people because I was like, I need to understand better, like how you see my current situation, And a lot of times we're a lot more compassionate looking backwards and forwards. And if we're talking to the right people, they'll also do the same thing. They'll be like, hey, you're doing great stuff. And yes, like maybe you made some mistakes or it's a bummer that job didn't work out or whatever, but it's all about what you do here now that matters.
Well said. Well said. You're absolutely right. It's all we got is our present, right? And the things that we do, the things that we say, well, it often sets us in motion in certain directions, and that's the tomorrow direction, right? And but I also know that it's really easy to get caught up collecting potential, collecting sort of the ideas of, well, I'll do that tomorrow, or next week, this sort of forward-facing intentionality. But it also takes discipline and commitment to actually follow through when that day comes. Otherwise, eventually you find ourselves full with pockets full of tomorrows that never were realized, and all we got left to look upon is a lot of wasted yesterdays. So, just to echo what you said, you're right. All we got is the present, right? And but when we look at it through a lens of vulnerability, just meaning we're not here to see anything as anything other than what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just, it is, and I apologize for the cliche, it is what it is, but often that's what it is, like we give a lot of meaning to things, especially emotional meaning. And we have to also question, what state was I in when I gave it that meaning? Right back to what you opened with your first statement today, right? That these emotions are basically habits or memories that we've already experienced repeating itself. And when you start to dig into trauma and sort of the triggers that trigger traumatic memories, and it's unfinished business, right? It's really, we've never cleared that stuff. We've never gotten to a place where we've understood it or accepted it and moved past it. And so we tend to relive those moments, and being someone in the fitness industry was interesting because when I transitioned to doing more of what I do today, and believe me, I'm still fully committed to fitness and helping people with that, but it's more of a holistic approach now. Fitness is a means to the end. And what I mean by that is to become holistically awesome, okay, on all levels, you need to have your health, all right? Like without the health part, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually something's got to give, and so we want to build up that natural resiliency. And I find that fitness is a wonderful way to do that, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and especially physically, right? But, if we go too long without getting that clarity and taking that action and setting that intention, holy smokes, man, we wake up pretty quick and it's like, whoa, where did the last 5 years go? And when you start to think in retrospect and introspect, it's like, geez, is this where I thought I'd be 5 years? Like when I was 5 years ago, is this where I thought I'd be today? No, I often, when we have that kind of looking back and from that vulnerability lens, we can be honest with ourselves. We're not looking to sugarcoat anything, but it also allows us to create the clarity we need to move forward, and, anyways, I digress and I'm getting off on a tangent here, but I appreciate the question and statement,
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of things we can do to like foster that clarity in ourselves on a consistent basis. For me, I do a lot of writing. I've lately been trying to do more meditating. That's made a big difference. And I also have, I found for myself, sort of accidentally, I guess, like for me with interviewing people, I like having two people on a week. I interview those two people. It's not like I'm trying to interview a million people. Like there's some podcasts that they interview like a bunch of people and they have interviews every day. That's not how my podcast rolls. My podcast is not, it's not like the thing. Like I see my big thing being like public speaking or writing or something. The podcast is more or less a journal of a sort, and I don't need to write in it every single day. But it provides a lot of clarity for me. Like just now, I made an episode last week about processing, and I made this week about about the need to rebuild your system. So like what was happening last year sometimes is I'd have like my like brain would be so overloaded and I'd be like, what are you doing, brain? Like do it, go faster, like work, like do what you've been called to do. Like you have all this potential and ability and there's nothing but, awesomeness. Maybe not, you know what I'm saying? Like there's these really cool bright moments that are suggesting that, holy cow, there's some really good stuff happening that's going to happen and it's not happening. So like, let's kick it into gear, but maybe you just need to delete some programs, help it process. So that's a long way of me saying like, what do you do, Dai, consistently to help you maintain that level of clarity you want in your life?
Well, your habit already is a wonderful one and one that I utilize regularly. Like I've got my list here, and whenever I start to find myself feeling overwhelmed, and I've dealt with anxiety, especially social anxiety, a good chunk of my life, especially from early childhood into my teens and even into my 20s, and it wasn't until I really started putting some very specific work. Okay, I was doing work. That's the way it felt. It wasn't easy. Felt like work, but I knew I wanted to get more comfortable in larger settings. I knew I wanted to be more comfortable speaking in public, because I felt I had a message to share. And I knew I had to overcome that anxious brain of mine, that was holding me back. That was second guessing myself all the time and making me feel stuck, And so when I started to really explore ways of calming that monkey mind, if you will, I found that by creating a list, dumping everything that's in my head onto the paper, that was so helpful. And then organize it in a way that I could attack it, prioritize what's most important and then just do those things, not attack the whole list in one day, because that was often very unfeasible. But even just to attack one or two of those things, to be able to cross it out on my list and say, you know what, I just did it. Not just do it, but just did it, right? Like Nike, I love it. Great slogan. but I like to have that feeling of already being done, right? Like, so I think it should be just did it, like I just did my workout, right? Just did my list, like it's that act of completion that makes us feel really good, like we're seeing progress, right? And I knew that that was important for me because as soon as I could get a little momentum going, good things would happen. I found that one would lead into getting two things off my list or maybe three things, and they would make me feel good. Make me feel like I am making a difference. I'm making an impact. I'm making forward movement for my own life. And so that was one exercise that I still do to today. And I've been doing it for, gosh, a long time, longer than I care to admit, but it's very helpful. Now, I know some people like to journal. That's great too. I do that sporadically, not as consistently as making a list. But for me, it's like a micro journal in a way, it's a very specific, it's to that tasks, because it's often, that's what triggers the anxiety for me, is just the idea of all the possible things that I should be doing or have to do or want to do, and the fear of forgetting something, So for me, it's attacking that specifically, and that opens up space for me to get creative in other areas in my life, and to take action. Because when you have clarity, you can't help but feel the confidence in yourself increase. And when that confidence increases and you have the clarity together, you take more action. And to be quite frank, it will kill the procrastination in you. Because we all have it. It's all there. Trust me, we all have that tendency to procrastinate, okay? But when you're clear and you're very action orientated, because of that clarity and confidence, you'll procrastinate less, and you'll get more done and accomplish more, and you're going to feel good for that. So that's the one piece that's been very helpful, for sure.
That's beautiful. And I think there's this need to experiment and try different stuff, because for some people, maybe it's like this morning pages where you write whatever's on your mind. And I do that at the beginning of the day now, using 750 words.
Wonderful.
And there's a lot of different things I have tried. And then I also have my other journal. And I also do like trackers in my Evernote of like, how am I feeling overall energy wise? And I try to do that a couple times a day. And then I'm slowly get this long list of data points that help you get a lot of clarity. But it is like a personal adventure. And that can be a little bit, daunting. But at the same time, you can look back at the past, like what's worked, like what methods have worked well for you, and you can start from there and experiment, And then once you have some of those things, like you have a pretty good idea of what works, then keep doing those things, Even if it doesn't seem to be bearing a ton of fruit, like trees take 20 years. A lot of trees take a long time to build. And I think of like that bamboo tree too, where it's like there's almost no growth. And then 6 years in, it grows to like full maturity in like a couple weeks. So I think I know for sure this is how a lot of things are built, is there's a lot of building in the builder, and then they're able to actually build it, which sounds crazy, but that is often how I see it goes.
It's well said. I like that, and you're absolutely right. It's just another tool in the toolbox, and there's lots of tools out there, but they're only beneficial when you take them out of the box and you use them, So it's, and even for those that are thinking about some of these morning rituals, and I know there's a lot of content out there speaking about different rituals in the morning to set people's days up, to get them in that great place of creativity and productivity. And I think it's wonderful. But my only warning to everyone is not to be so prescriptive that you have to go step by step through all those things, because when it's a prescription and we feel like I have to do this, rather than being like, I want to do this, or even, man, isn't it cool I get to do this? Very different energy goes into all those, right? And so if it becomes something that's overwhelming or daunting, or it's just like, oh, another thing to do, and I'm not doing it, so I feel like I'm failing, right? Not a good thing. It's not a good place to be. Find the one or two things and do the one or two things and see how things progress. If that worked and you feel better and you notice your energy's good throughout the day, your focus is good, that might be something to do more consistently, But you don't have to do everything, all right? Find the things that work for you and do those, all right? And because I see it the same with fitness, right? I've been coaching people in fitness for 28 years, fitness, nutrition, and mindset conditioning. And I'll tell you, when it comes to fitness and nutrition, it's amazing at how many different things we can do. I mean, it's endless. It is endless, and there's so much misinformation out there, right? Someone sees somebody getting certain results, like, wow, I'll just do exactly what they do. Meanwhile, when you look in those people's backgrounds, like, yeah, they played semi-professional sports all the way through high school, through their collegiate years. They already had a huge foundation of health. So a lot of the things they're doing every day is not the stuff that typical people that are just getting started would start with. But yet, they're doing that. So maybe if I do that, I'll get similar results. It's like we have to really recognize, where are we starting from, and adapt a plan from there, you know? And so, yeah, anyways, I know we can jam all over the place on this stuff, so this is great.
I'm not sure how intentional you meant this to go, but this is a perfect setup for we have the house foundation with Dai Manuel. We have faith, family, finance, and fitness, I believe, and then we have fun.
That's right.
On the top, which I absolutely love, because that's what I've been working on a lot more, is like celebrating. Yeah, like woo, you know, like getting super excited. Like, let's celebrate, you know, like, let's get excited about it, because this didn't have to happen. Like, there's a possibility that you missed that call with that person, or you didn't catch your plane, or whatever. And so being thankful for those little miracles that were in your day. And what comes to mind is, like, you know, like, water is water, but you can like still like be excited about it, you know, like once they started like making different flavors of water, it's like, yeah, water, you know, it's like it's still the same water basically. But when we have those different ingredients in our day that we really just look forward to on a deeper level, I mean, we're just going to be living more deeply. We're going to be excited more deeply. We're not going to be as affected by if like somebody's like shooting arrows at us or whatever, like, hey, like, I think what you're doing is dumb. It's like, well, you know, it's like you're just not going to be paying as much attention to, because you're just in love, you know. And I think that's a beautiful thing, is when we're able to love those parts of ourselves, even if there's things that maybe we don't necessarily understand. You know, last year I learned a ton about my ADHD because I didn't really have as much of a schedule at times. And so I saw my brain go all over the place. And, you know, at first I was like really frustrated about that. But, you know, I've learned a ton about it, been working on some books and stuff, reading about it and stuff. And it's helped me have a lot more clarity. Like, oh, wait, this sounds like exactly in line with what I need to help me do what I want to do. Like the ability to hyper focus, not pay attention to like what other stuff is going on. I should own this, you know, instead of feeling like I shouldn't own it or something. Like, this is not part of me, let's take this part out of me. That's impossible. You know, you can take medications and stuff, and I've had medication for depression and stuff before, and it, you know, this is tough. I didn't even plan to talk about this, but like, I think there's times like it helped maybe a tiny bit, but generally I love running. I love creativity. I love being able to take what's in my brain and actually put it out in the world. I get a lot of satisfaction from that I believe is stronger than any drug or any other possible thing. And that's just me. That's obviously not the case for everybody, but I feel like for me, there's a beautiful thing to just give yourself that ability to do that beautiful thing that you want to do.
Yes. I mean, listen, I know I'm going to throw another cliche, right? We hear that cliche, life is short. And I guess it's all perspective, right? Like, it's amazing when we're in it. And remember when, as a kid, it's like, wow, 18 can never come fast enough, right? Oh, be done high school. Thank goodness, right? And yet, you know, now I'm like, man, wouldn't it be cool to do that again? You know, like, because I see my own kids, you know, finishing up their high school careers or starting their university careers. And I remember what it was like, you know, and you know, hindsight's not always 20/20, but nor is foresight, right? Like, it's wild when we really start to think about our lives as a story, right? Like, one of my favorite books is by an author by the name of Paulo Coelho, and he wrote the book called The Alchemist. And for anybody that's looking for a great read, or you like listening to like audibles or audiobooks, there's a version of the book that's narrated by Jeremy Irons. And for those that aren't aware, he's an Academy Award winner, fantastic actor. But he's just wonderful at reading this book because he gives all the characters their own little voice. And he's just got such an easy voice to listen to and a wonderful storyteller. But this book is exactly what we're talking about right now. the hero's journey. And this hero's journey, we're all on one. We start from somewhere, and along this journey, we might meet people along the way, and people that influence us and shift our perspective ever so slightly. So that big milestone that was in front of us, this monolith type of obstacle that we were anticipating, it's like all of a sudden, because of that interaction with that one person in that one moment, oh, there's a little trail that goes around that thing. That's awesome. I wouldn't have seen that had I not met that guide or guru or teacher or coach or parent or best friend, right? Like, that one interaction shifted the trajectory of this journey that we're on and allowed us to navigate it even more effectively and impactfully. And here's the coolest part, and I'll sort of tie a bow on this, is as is stated in some of this hero's journey work, is we often get to a destination and we feel like, I made it. I got to where I had my vision of where I wanted to get to, and here I am. Inevitably, I encourage everyone, when you get to that place or you accomplish that goal, is you take a moment to turn around and look behind. Look at where you came from to get there. Reflect. Appreciate that journey. Be grateful for that journey. And what often will happen for many, many people out there, and me included, and this is why I do what I do today and been doing it for so long, is when I got to that place and made some big, significant shifts in my life, when I turned around and looked back, I saw a bunch of other people waiting at the trailhead. They were waiting to start their own journeys. Similar, not the same, but similar to what I just done. And it was in me. I felt this need to go down and help them now navigate that journey, just like that one person was that helped me see around that monolith so I could accomplish that goal. And this is what makes the world such a beautiful place, because there's people like this everywhere. In fact, I would hazard a guess that the people listening to this or watching this podcast are that exact people. You're on a journey, and maybe you're impacting someone else on their journey right now, because inevitably we're always going to be a few steps ahead of somebody. But we have to take a moment to just turn around and see who's behind us, And this is the stuff that gets me most excited, because when we start to reflect that, you're never going to be alone. Because I know people talk about feeling alone or being lonely, but it's a choice, okay? It's a choice. There's people out there that would love to lock arms to go on that journey with us, right? Because they're on the same path. So why not become path buddies, so we can hang out and accomplish life together. And I think that's really the thing that makes everything amazing in these lives of ours. So, yeah, I'll get off the soapbox right now, but you totally triggered that idea in me, so thank you.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more we could go into with that. It's fun to just kind of reflect, because I've been at home for 2 months now, and when I have been home for 1 month, I found this month of like, I'm really good at remembering numbers, all this stuff. So it's like, it's 1 month, and what have I really done? I started like beating myself about it, and I was like, no. Went over and walked and sat by this like river that used to not be in my neighborhood, but they actually, so like quick story. I used to play like football like on our street, so like ended in a cul-de-sac, and it was this long stretch and ended in woods. They actually leveled out all those woods, made a bunch of different houses, and put like a river thing back there. I don't really know how they did it.
Wow.
And so
terraforming, crazy.
So I was like, this is nuts. But that little river spot is one of my favorite places to go think now. And it's like, this wasn't here when I was growing up. So let's just be thankful for that. But something that I did was I was like, you know what? Let's just write down as many things as I accomplished in the last month. I came up with 30. I'm like, 30 in a month? That's pretty good. And some of them were kind of really small. Good. But then there's other ones. It's like I played basketball like 10 or 11 times playing pickup. And one of them I did pretty good in most of them. And one of them I did outstanding. So like, let's be thankful for that. And there is so much to celebrate on the journey. I made an episode a while ago about looking at like your inventory, and like, because in video games they do a great job of this. They're like, look at what you've accomplished, all these bosses you took out, all these tokens you accomplished, and all those things are generally meaningless, more or less, in the video game sphere. But when we take that same same system and put that into our own life, like, hey, I got married, I had a kid, I did all this different stuff, and you can break down each of those. And it was like, well, what led to this happening? Who was the person that was put in my life that helped with this the most? And this is beautiful, because we can go so deep in just appreciating our journey. And I think that's just one of the most important things that we can do, Dai, is just to learn how do we celebrate and appreciate the journey. Because you are right. Life is short, and at some point, somebody's going to be listening to this podcast like 50 years in the future, and maybe one of us won't be here, or I'll be dead. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't, but we do know that if we are learning from our journey and sharing it and connecting with people, because I look back at some people and I'm like, oh, I want to go help that person. When we do that, we're making the world a better place, and we're living a more beautiful life.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I got some shivers there. That was great. I love that. I love the premise, and I like that idea of the inventory, because it's, my wife and I were minimalists, or at least aspiring minimalists. We've been back in Vancouver for a couple of years now due to the pandemic, and it's amazing. We accumulate stuff. But our main passion is actually accumulating experiences and connection. That's what we collect. And so when we think about our inventory of experiences, it's what shaped us to who we are right now, and will continue to shape us into who we are yet to become, right? And it's just the experiences that matter the most, right? So being able to take that inventory on our experiences. Now, it's pretty neat, because with social media, if you're active on it and you're cataloging your stuff, even if just for yourself. I have a friend, and he's actually a former client. We now become very good friends, and he has an Instagram account that's hidden, and all he uses it for is he puts his own posts or videos in there as a diary that he collects ongoing. So it's a private account, no one can follow him on it, but he just uses it to collect all his own experiences and memories. It's literally a diary for him. And I thought, what a cool idea, like, that is neat. I was like, that is really, really novel, and but it inspired me and reminded me of just how important our experiences are. And so, yeah, we're quite active on social, but it's more so of a way for us cataloging our experiences, but also sharing what we're learning from those experiences and inviting others to say, have you had something similar? Have you experienced something like this? What was your experience like this? Because that's how we all collectively grow and learn together, right? And that's how I look at social media. I think it's just a wonderful tool for exactly that reason.
Yeah, it can be so ridiculously powerful to just get better clarity of self and be able to reach people all over the world. It's amazing, all the good that it can do. Well, just kind of tell us a couple things that you're doing to celebrate your life, I guess, right now, like some of those wins, and then where we can find you, Dai.
Oh, well, thank you. Recently, I've been speaking professionally now for about 10 years, right? So I facilitate, conversations. I work as an MC or a spokesperson for different organizations and companies, and I love that stuff. It's something that I leaned into, but I remember when I started that over 10 years ago as someone that dealt with a lot of social anxiety. I mean, speaking in front of more than one or two people at once, I was like, oh boy, I can't do this. And that was my way of thinking. And so I found an organization called Toastmasters. It's a nonprofit. It's global. Anybody has access to it, either online or offline, or both. It helped me change. It helped me gain this confidence in myself by supporting me as I leaned into that fear and said, you know what, this fear, I can't get rid of you, but I'm going to learn how to leverage you to help me produce the things that I want to produce. And so I didn't feel like I was holding back. So now, my fear is still there, trust me. I get the heart rate going, I get the sweaty palms, I'm like, what am I going to do? And I've learned to channel that into something exciting that allows me to create an impact. And so when I started in on the pandemic, we relocated back to Vancouver, I was like, oh gosh, what is something that scares me? Something that I believe I can't do, that I'd like to challenge myself to do. So recently, I did stand up for the first time.
Wow.
And that, because it scares the crap out of me. So I was like, there's one thing that absolutely terrifies me with stand up. So I decided, I'm going to do it. And so I've done that, and I really enjoyed it, and I plan to do more of it now. So that is one thing that I've done very recently that I'm very proud of. And I'm excited about where it's going to lead me, because it's also made me way more dynamic as a speaker, but also helped me connect and just be a little bit more humorous in my everyday life, And so why I'm sharing this is, all of us, it's not a matter of thinking about all the different things that we can do. It's just like, find one thing and lean in on that. And it might scare you. It's going to intimidate you. It's going to create a lot of change for you too. But what's wrong with that, Because it's that potential's in all of us. Just sometimes we just gotta unlock it and just go with it. And hey, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna trip. Trust me, I have a lot. But you can get up every time, and give it another go because you learn through that experience and you grow. So yeah, so that's the one thing. Thank you for asking that, by the way. And for people to connect with me, I'm pretty easy to find with a unique name like Dai Manuel. Dai's Welsh for David. Manuel is Portuguese. Yeah, Welsh and Portuguese. I know. I'm just Canadian. Don't worry about it. And so that's how I like to phrase that up. But if you go on any social media platform, you type in my name, Dai, Dai, Manuel, Manuel, you'll find me, and just shoot me a note. I love having conversations with people, and just give me a little bit of grace if I don't respond right away, because I manage my own social. I don't allow anybody else to touch that, because that connection, it's important to me. And so just give me a little bit of time. If you send me a DM, it might be a couple days, but I will get back to you. So I always welcome the conversation and the connection. So thank you.
It's beautiful. Well, I look forward to connecting with you again on another part of our hero's journey. Woo!
Yeah,
and
let me know when you're coming to Vancouver.
That would be so sick. It really would be. Yeah. I'll have links to all your stuff in the show notes, Dai. And yeah, just thank you so much for coming on. It was fun to have you on. And I don't know, this will be a fun conversation to revisit. And just, I don't know, just a lot of compassion in the journey. If you make a lot of rivers of compassion, that will bring you to a better place. So do you have anything else you wanted to add, Dai? I know we gotta let you go, but
just one little thing, and that's really to acknowledge you. All right, Dallin, I gotta say thank you for you leaning into this to the point that I know it's not necessarily easy. It requires a lot of change typically, and change ain't easy, but it's almost always worth it. All right. Especially when we feel like we're being more proactive with the change in our lives, because we are leaning into something that we know is going to create or foster change for us. But that's a beautiful thing. And you are role modeling that, as well as sharing that openly through this platform. And I just want to say thank you for putting this out to the world, showing us all that it is not only possible, but it's doable, and anybody can step up to start doing it. But you've been so vulnerable with your shares and what you're putting out there. I'm very inspired by it. So thank you. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to connect with you and your audience today. I mean, this has just been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. It's beautiful to have those little things that we wrote down, because then we can go back and be like, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's ultimately got you to where you are today. So yeah, I appreciate that. I do. It's been a crazy, however many months since I slept in on that interview back in July, but learned a lot from it. So thank you so much.
It was meant to happen. It was meant to happen, because you think about it, how much better this conversation is today because of that. Like, yeah, it happened for a reason, so it's all good. I'm fine with it, and I'm just glad that we finally were able to connect. This has been awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad it all just came together however it came together. I'm at the point where I'm just like, I'm just going to take it a day at a time, enjoy the day, laugh along, figure it out, because I don't have to worry about tomorrow. God's got tomorrow. I can plan, I can work, and ultimately He's got tomorrow. He's able to hold this moment too, and make it a better moment too. So I'll just give that to Him. So yeah, but we'll let you go. Thank you so much, Dai. And
thank you.
Yeah, everybody else, just check out Dai's stuff. Thanks, Dai.
Thank you. Take care.